cooking stove, food for humans, fodder for animals, casks of water, mattresses, folding beds, other tent furniture, tourist luggage, and so on. I was happy till after the baggage train had got away, each camel with its head roped to the tail of the one ahead, all trailing off toward the distant pyramids of Saqqara well in advance of us. Each camel looked like a house moving. On top of the kitchen camel's load was perched the chef, a singularly withered old gentleman with black and blue complexion, clad in a vague, flying blanket. Has been Turkish coffeeman in Paris hotels. Many other negroid persons in white with large turbans, a few café au lait Arabs, these all counted before Slaney for me, and identified as assistant cooks, waiters, bedmakers, and camelmen, enough apparently to stock a village. But we had one surprise at the moment of starting in the form of a bright black child, clad in white, with a white skull cap and a flat profile evidently copied from the Sphinx. I don't know yet why this baby Sphinx has come or who he is, but he rode on the kitchen camel's tail, hanging on by the bread, our bread, which was in a bag. When this cavalcade had wound away, the camels making blue heart-shaped tracks in the yellow sand, it was our turn to start. Not one of us would have changed places with any old Egyptian king or queen, and we did not feel vulgar for doing this trip in luxury, because ancient royalties had done the same, and so do the great sheikhs of the desert even now. As I put Cleopatra into the sand cart with its broad, iron-rimmed wheels, she was recalling the days when she travelled with a train of asses in order to have milk for her bath. I suggested a modern condensed substitute, but the offer was not received in the spirit with which it was made. Now to get the ladies on their camels, after which we men would vault upon our animals, and wind away among billowing dunes full of shadowy ripples and high lights, like cream-coloured velvet. But just here arose the first small cloud in the blue. It was bigger than a man's hand, for it was the exact size and shape of Miss Hassett Bean's hat. It was a largish hat of imitation Panama trimmed with green veiling, just the hat for a postcard desert all pink sunset and no wind. As she was about to mount the squatting camel, a breeze blew the flap over her eyes. This prevented Miss H. B. from seeing that the camel had turned its neck to look at her, and so, as she reached the saddle and the hat blew up, lady and camel met face to face. It was a moment of suspense, for neither liked the other at first sight. Then the camel began to gurgle its throat in a threatening manner, and at the same time to rise. Miss Hassett Bean, staring into two quivering nostrils shaped like badly made purses, shrieked, forgot whether she must first bend forward or bend back, bent in the way she ought not to have bent, and fell upon the sand. I don't quite see why I was to blame for this result, but she saw, and said I ought to have warned her what a vile creature a camel was. Nothing would induce her to try again. She would go to any extreme rather than to ride a beast with a snake for a neck, and a nasty, unsympathetic face full of green juice which it spit out at you. She was used to being liked. She simply couldn't go about on a thing which would never love her, and she wouldn't want it to if it did. She would go home, or else she would have a sand cart. All the neighbouring sand carts were engaged, but fortunately Antoun Effendi appeared at that instant. He'd taxied out to see us off, and he persuaded Cleopatra to let Miss Hassett Bean drive with her. The desert horse, feeling this extra weight, looked round almost as unsympathetically as the camel had, but nobody paid the slightest attention except his attendant, who was to lead him, a type of negro nut who had a snobbish habit of reddening his nails with henna. By this time a crowd had assembled, kept in check by the tall, blue-robed sheikh of the pyramids. It consisted mostly of Arabs determined to take our photographs or sell us scarabs, which Miss Hassett Bean refused on the ground that she disliked things off dead people. But on the fringe lurked a few Europeans, amused to see so large a caravan setting forth, and the men of our party, hitherto proud of their curtained helmets and desert get-up, became self-conscious under a fire of snapshots. "Hello, my Boy Scout," I was hailed by Sir Marcus, arriving 3 minutes behind Anthony, and on the same errand. This blow to my self-esteem fell as I was leading Monny to the white camel which was hers, and should have been Antony's. She laughed. I suppose she couldn't help it. I couldn't myself, if it had been Harry Snell or Bill Bailey, but as it was, my pride of khaki helmet, knickers, and puttees collapsed like a burst balloon. I seemed to feel the calves of my legs wither. It was in this mood that I had to put Monny on that coastguard camel, while Antoun stood looking on. He did not offer to help the girl, as their talk yesterday on the subject of baggage camels versus running camels had not conduced to officiousness. Monny was in white, broad white helmet such as women wear, white suede shoes, white silk stockings, and a lot of lacy garden party things that showed frills when she flew, bird-like, onto the cushioned saddle. "That's the way to do it," I heard her cry, exultantly, and what happened next I can't say, for the white camel knocked me over as it bounded up, jerking its nose rope from the leader's hand, and the next thing I knew it was making for the horizon. I hadn't been on a camel since I was 4, if then, so it was useless to follow. But while I stood spitting out sand, Anthony flung himself on one of the swift coastguard beasts, and was after her like a streak of four-legged lightning. None of us had the nerve to continue our operations until, a quarter of an hour later, they appeared from behind the Great Pyramid, coming at a walk, Antoun holding the bridle of Monny's camel. I saw by Fenton's face that he intended to make no suggestions, and I guessed that he was practising his chosen method. If Miss Gilder wished for anything she must ask for it, and ask for it humbly if she expected to get it. Her face, too, was a study. She was pale and even piteous. I thought there were tears in the blue-grey eyes, and if I had been Anthony I could not have hardened my heart. Pride or no pride, I should have begged her to abandon this praiseworthy adventure, and deign to mount the baggage brute. Not so Anthony. He led back the camel, with Monny limply sitting on it, and when it had calmed down at sight of its friends, he retired into the background. "How wonderful that you kept on, darling!" exclaimed Biddy. "I didn't," said Monny. Then she turned to Antoun, who remained on his beast, in case of another emergency, or because he did not wish to be looked down upon by her. He was rather glorious enthroned on his camel, the only one of our party who was truly in the desert picture. I didn't blame him for stopping up there on his sheepskin, eye to eye with the girl. For a moment Monny did not speak. She was evidently hesitating what to do, but common sense and natural sweetness got the better of false pride. "Antoun, you were right, and I was wrong," she admitted. "I said yesterday that you were selfish, keeping the coastguard camels for yourself and Lord Ernest and General Harlow, and giving us women the baggage ones. Now I'm sorry. I was silly and hateful. I wouldn't ride another 50 yards on this demon for $50,000. He's nearly broken my back, and if it hadn't been for you, he would quite have done it. Please help me off and put me on any old baggage thing that nobody else wants." Anthony's eyes lit for an instant, from satisfaction as a man, or from Christian joy in her moral improvement. He sprang off his sky-scraping camel, brought Monny's animal to its knees, helped her off, and motioned to the Arab attendant of the ugly duckling of all the other creatures. It gave the effect of being a cross between a camel and an ostrich, and had been chosen by Antoun as his own mount, when he surrendered the aristocrat to Monny. "Oh, dearest, I can't have you ride that grasshopper," cried Biddy. "Antoun took it for himself very kindly because it's the worst. And I don't care any more than he did. Give the thing to me, and take my one, that dear creature with the blue bead necklace." But Anthony answered for Monny. "Mademoiselle Gilder made a bargain with me yesterday," he said. "If she failed in what she wished to do, she was to do what I wanted her to do. I think she will wish to keep her bargain." "I'm sure I wish to," added Monny. With a chastened, not to say shattered air, she curled herself up on the sheepskin-covered cushion which was the ugly duckling's saddle. This time it was Antoun who settled her into place, with her feet meekly crossed, and the caricature of a camel rose like a sofa at a spiritualistic séance. Strange to say, however, when all were ready to start, Monny appeared more comfortably lodged than any of the camel-riding ladies, and the thought entered my mind that perhaps Anthony had, with extreme subtlety, taken this roundabout way of benefiting Miss Gilder. After this we got off with only a few minor mishaps. The one remaining incident of note was the arrival on the scene, as we left it, of another caravan, a small caravan consisting of 2 Europeans, a few laden camels, and camel boys marshalled by one dragoman. The dragoman was Bedr el Gamali, and he smiled at us affectionately, as though we had not driven him from us in disgrace. "How forgiving Arabs are, even when they're not converted," remarked Rachel Guest, by whose side I happened to be riding. "He isn't an Arab," I said, "he's an Armenian, and both are supposed to be the reverse of forgiving. But he's found another job quickly, so he can afford to let bygones be bygones." "Oh, he would anyway!" Miss Guest exclaimed warmly. "Poor fellow, you've all done him a great injustice.